This is a lecture on Individualized Education Programs, or IEPs. My name is Dr. George Giuliani from Hofstra University, and this lecture is going to cover in detail the legal requirements of IEPs, the contents of IEPs, the purpose of IEPs, and many other factors associated with IEPs, and especially the importance of why all children receiving special education services in the United States must have an IEP. Now, the centerpiece of our federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, or IDEA, is the requirement that each student receiving special education and related services has an individualized education program, or an IEP. The contents of the IEP are designed to provide a roadmap for the child's educational programming during the course of the coming year. And that's how we're going to think about an IEP. It's a roadmap getting from the start of the school year to the end of the school year for a student with a disability. And the IEP is the primary mechanism for ensuring that students with disabilities receive an appropriate education. Now, an IEP summarizes all the information gathered concerning the student, sets the expectations of what the student will learn over the next year, and describes the special education and related services the student will receive. And the bottom line, most important thing to understand right now is this. Every student who receives special education services in the United States must have an IEP. So if you have a child classified with a disability in your classroom, that child needs to have an IEP associated with him or her. No exception to the rule whatsoever. The development of an IEP is a collaborative effort between the school district, or the local education agency, as we'll call it, the LEA, and the parents. So it's a collaborative effort between the school district, the LEA, and the parents to ensure that a student's special education program will be appropriate and will meet his or her individual, unique needs. And that's very important to recognize, that when we develop this IEP, it's going to be a collaborative effort. There will be an IEP team. It'll involve many different people, but the parents and the school district will work together on this team. They'll be a part of one team, and the whole fundamental purpose is to ensure that the student's special education program will be appropriate, and that ultimately it will meet his or her individual and unique needs. Now, the forms on which IEPs are written vary somewhat across state and local districts. However, IDEA spells out very clearly the required components of an IEP. We will now take a look at all the different required components of an IEP under the federal law. So, if you look at the IEP form in one school district, it may look different than the IEP form in another school district. So an IEP in California might look different than an IEP in Texas, which might look different than an IEP on Long Island. And in two different school districts on Long Island, the IEPs could look different. But in the end, it doesn't really matter how the forms look, because the content of the IEP is standard across the board. What's in the IEP will be the same whether you're in Texas, California, Michigan, New York. It doesn't matter, because the federal law for special education, IDEA, spells out very clearly the required components of an IEP. And what we'll do now is just list those components, and then we'll get into each one in detail. So what must go into an IEP? What are the required components of an IEP? Well, first, the child's present levels of educational performance, a statement of measurable annual goals, a description of how the child's progress towards meeting the annual goals will be measured, a statement of the special education placement, related services, and assistive technology services to be provided, an explanation to the extent, if any, to which the child will not participate with children without disabilities, a statement of any accommodations or modifications in the administration of state or district-wide assessments of student achievement, the projected date for the beginning of the services and modifications, and the anticipated frequency, location, and duration of those services and modifications, transition services, and transfer rights at the age of majority. So again, there are 9 required components of an IEP. I've laid them out on these past 2 PowerPoint slides. Take a look at them. And we will now go through each one of the required components of the IEP in detail. Now first, the first required component of an IEP is that the IEP must contain a statement of the child's present levels of educational performance. Present levels of educational performance, also known as a PLEP. All right. So when you hear school districts or administrators talking about the PLEP, we're talking about the child's present levels of educational performance. And the PLEP is a summary describing the student's academic achievement and functional performance. It's really how is the child presently performing in school, looking at academic achievement and functional performance. So the academic achievement component of a PLEP are the academic subjects the child studies in school and the skills the student is expected to master in each, such as reading, writing, spelling, math, science, history, etc. The academic performance, how is the child currently doing academically? The child's present levels of academic achievement. The other end of the PLEP is the functional performance, the skills or activities that are not considered academic or related to a child's academic achievement, such as the child's social skills, the child's behavioral skills, the child's motor skills. So when we talk about a child's present levels of educational performance, we're talking about how is the child performing academically and how is the child functioning in the areas that are non-academic, such as socially, behaviorally, motorically, etc. So, what's an example of an academic PLEP? What would be a statement that you might see as an academic PLEP? Well, here's one. According to standardized tests, informal testing, and daily performance in the reading area, Sally is functioning in the below average range of achievement in reading comprehension. When Sally hears a story read by the teacher, she is very good at recalling ideas. Her independent instructional level is between 2nd and 3rd grade. Sally can locate details and the main idea about a story when she is reading at the 2nd grade level, but she has more difficulty locating the details and main idea when she is reading 3rd grade level and higher. She needs to practice reading sections to work on putting the endings on words and to build good reading fluency. So here's a good example of where Sally is performing academically. Where is Sally performing in the reading area? What is her present level of academic achievement? Another present level of academic achievement under a PLEP. In the area of math, Kevin's scores indicated that he needs to continue to receive math services. His scores were all in the well below range of achievement. Kevin needs to learn how to do subtraction with regrouping, and he also needs to learn the multiplication and division facts. Kevin could do multiplication problems of small two-digit numbers, but he had more difficulty with that skill when the numbers were larger. In addition, he also needs to work on problem-solving skills involving reading and understanding graphs, as well as knowing what operation to use to solve story problems. So here's another example of Kevin's present levels of academic achievement under the PLEP in the area of math. In terms of a functional PLEP, functional performance in PLEP, this would be an example. Bob continues to struggle behaviorally in the school setting. He is often disrespectful to authority figures and displays frequent non-compliant behaviors. Bob often waits for times when he thinks the teacher is not looking to display his misbehavior and is quietly defiant in his actions. Bob can be disruptive in a classroom or small group setting by making odd noises and atypical body movements. Most often when Bob is redirected, he smiles. Socially, Bob struggles with friendships conversationally while in the small group setting. He is better able to participate in group discussion than in the past. Bob continues to have issues with attention and focus. Bob needs firm limits and close supervision. He needs frequent redirection, reminders, and cueing to stay on task. Bob needs to exhibit better work ethic and organizational skills with independence. He needs to practice social skills so that he is more successful in his friendships. So there's an example of a functional present level of educational performance. So we saw academic performance, we saw functional performance. That combination of the two makes up the present levels of educational performance. So the bottom line is the PLEP is important because it enables families, students, and educators to monitor student progress in the general education curriculum, because it tells us where is this student currently, both academically in the academic achievement areas and functionally in terms of behavior and social skills. This ends part 1 of the lectures on IEPs. You can now go to part 2.